Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of From No Crypto to No Crypto. I'm your host, the Crypto Coach, Blockchain Wayne. Today we're joined by Dele from MetaMe. Dele, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great to see you, Wayne. How's it going?
Doing great, man. Great to have you on here to talk about what you've been building. You and I have been talking about this for at least a couple of years now, right? At least
Absolutely.
since you and I first started talking. So excited to see what's happening. You guys are coming close to some big announcements. And before we jump into MetaMe and all that, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you into this industry?
Yeah, great. Thanks. I've really been fascinated with tech and data for a long while. I was working with a couple of big corporations. I worked for Diageo, British American Tobacco, and IBM, heading up digital for them globally. And I used to do a lot about consumer digital. And I started working on a book around Web3. I wrote, believe it or not, this back in 2009. And, it was really just trying to understand the trends and what was driving. And I became just really fascinated with data. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it was like a really sensitive class of information and there were just big issues around it. So started to kind of really become fascinated at how the Arab Spring had happened in Tunisia. So there was this real sort of sense that data and could really have an impact on social change on one hand, but also put people's lives in danger on the other. So that really kind of got me thinking around it. And then Snowden happened, and that kind of blew the whole thing to a whole nother level of proportions. So we set up an NGO called the Internet Foundation. Then we were the first organization to call for digital rights as an extension of human rights. And that was all good. And we did a lot of work on policy and regulation and GDPR and MiCA, well, less MiCA, but more GDPR and privacy regulation, and work with Wyoming. I worked with the British Standard Institute to create an ethical data standard. So I really got involved on that side, but I was really fascinated by how could we use technology to solve these problems. And, Bitcoin came around in 2010. I remember reading the white paper and reading about Satoshi and loved the story about this guy who created it and then disappeared. But the tech didn't really solve this problem about data ownership and data sovereignty, at least how it was being developed at that time, until smart contracts came around in 2015. Properly with I know Xapo started them, but obviously with Ethereum they came at production scale, and that changed everything. That really opened up the possibilities for us to actually have decentralized information networks that could really facilitate doing this stuff at scale. So then in 2018, we formed MetaMe and started working on solutions using blockchain technology specifically to facilitate data ownership and data sovereignty.
Okay, nice. So yeah, 2018. I mean, that was what is that? 7 years now.
Yeah.
Man, time is flying, right? So 7 years, 7 years ago, started MetaMe. Tell me what that journey has been like, because I mean, 7 years. It's a long time in any industry, but definitely in ours, that's like a lifetime, right?
Yeah, it is. And, look, I think, the evolution of the trajectory and the conversation around data sovereignty in and of itself is just like really, it's really changed dramatically. I mean, when I first kind of started, it was like SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and just putting a message out that nobody would say anything. There was nothing coming back. Now, obviously, it's really sort of top of everyone's mind. For us, I think it's been tough. It's been a kind of, the industry's been tough. I still think that the crypto industry, the blockchain, the Web3 industry, so to speak, is still very immature in the context of information management beyond financial information. And financial, of course, it's very well established in financial information, but that's always been a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, I always joke, with data and AI and all of this stuff, it's like, well, actually, the hard thing to crack is data. The easiest thing is already being cracked. We've cracked the money thing with Bitcoin and
Right.
crypto generally. So I think it's been a difficult space overall. I think two things changed in the last 24 months that really changed the vector dramatically. Obviously, generative AI really kind of changed the whole AI landscape on one hand. But then also, the other thing that doesn't get as much attention is cryptography. Things like zero knowledge proof, homomorphic encryption, trusted execution environments. These technologies have really come a long way in the last 2 years, to the point that they're now they're at production scale and reliable production scale. So that really has changed the opportunity changed the landscape dramatically. So we basically re-architected a lot of what we worked on from a protocol perspective in the last 12 months, particularly. And it's amazing what we're able to take advantage of now based on the state of the art of the technology.
Nice. So yeah, let's jump into the technology. So at its core, tell us what is MetaMe? Like what and there's multiple moving parts to this that really seem to flow together wonderfully. So tell us a little bit about that, the vision and what is MetaMe.
Yeah, and in line of that evolution, it's funny. Someone was saying, all the AI companies like Anthropic, Claude is the product. There's a big dichotomy between what the company's called and what the product is because they've changed so much over the years, right? And in many ways, I mean, and MetaMe's always kind of been our North Star, our vision. It's really basically about a self-sovereign AI that works for you. We're one of the first organizations to call on this concept of having your own personal AI that manages other AIs for you, that manages your life state for you. And it's funny, actually, we have a video on our site and, people go, oh, yeah, I see what you do. Yeah, that's what we need. And we shot that video in 2018. So It kind of really shows how the markets move there. And that's kind of becoming possible now. But what was always key to us was this concept of containerizing data and creating these information containers. So while MetaMe is this self-sovereign AI, it's really underpinned by this technology we call iCubes, the iCube technology. And we've developed this protocol around it. We used to call it MPODs, but we evolved it and started to integrate quantum resistance and that kind of mindset into it too. So we rebranded it iCubes a couple of years ago. And basically, the way that I describe iCubes is you can think of them like crypto zip files. So like a zip file, you can put anything digital inside them. It could be data, it could be content, media, tools, workflows, models, agents, blueprints for spaceships. It doesn't really matter. You can put anything inside an iCube. But rather than compressing, we encrypt. And rather than password protecting, their access is token gated. So what this does is that it means that you can use tokenization to manage, control, and access to any kind of information asset in a really smart way, in an intelligent way, using smart contracts and programmability. And the real power of it is in this combination of public and private data. So overall, we're like a network of network. We're not a layer one. There's a lot of infrastructure out there. That's again one of the wonderful things. We don't need to build infrastructure. We leverage all the infrastructure that's out there. And but it's kind of a network of network model where there's a twin network of networks. So there's a public network, which we call the MetaNet, which is basically where there's all this public data about private information objects. So if you have this container which has your information in it, well, there's a public description of what that information is that anyone can see, anyone can read, anyone can access. So, and then there's the private payload that you have to have the key to unlock, which is basically the token. So you have a token to unlock that, and then you can access that and consume that. And the power is that the public data is anonymous and doesn't reveal anything about the data subject that is referenced in the data. And we have these 4 different states of identity, varying from anonymity to identifiability, fully verifiable identifiability. And the power of the protocol is that we have this anonymity at a network level, this privacy of the information object, but the ability to verify what is in these private data sets without exposing them. And that's really kind of where the magic happens.
Gotcha. So, and I'm glad you mentioned the thing about there's a lot of robust networks out there, because I see so many projects in the incubation period that talk about launching their own blockchain. And man, just having experienced it firsthand with FIO, like we so wish we would have like kind of let someone else roll. There's great networks out there. So instead of just being able to focus on your core product, you've got to manage and nurture the growth of the chain itself, right? And so it's so much easier to build on existing and trusted networks.
It really is, and it just creates so much. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's a business. It's a technical challenge. It's a operational challenge, and then it creates distorted incentives and mechanics, and then everybody just becomes obsessed with using it becomes this Frankenstein thing where you're trying to morph your network to serve this token model that you've built around the network rather than leveraging the network and leveraging the technology accordingly. And then you start to create these kind of friction barriers that to try and capture value. Whereas I think the future really is about interoperability across networks. I think it's very important to have different networks. I think it's very important to have diversification of networks and capabilities and strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. But what we really want is an ability to be able to transition and move information between different networks with different capabilities, just like we're going to do across different agents and different AI systems. So yeah, I think it's a different mindset. I think people are starting.
Kind of like another layer, kind of like an operating system that just kind of sits in between. That makes sense because there has to be some give and take. I agree. A lot of different networks is important. It's crucial for innovation and growth. But at the same time, we need those interoperability tools because if not, I mean, think about we're trying to escape centralized controlled systems. When you're talking about data, I mean, people are really. If you'd have talked about this maybe 10 years ago, I think most people didn't quite understand it. Now, understanding what's happening, seeing some of the exploitation of data from big tech like Google and Meta and others, even as big as what the Cambridge Analytica info that came out, right? So we know our data is being monetized and sold by these giant centralized corporations, and taking back ownership is important. But we're escaping these centralized walled gardens where, okay, if you want to operate, you have to operate in this centralized system. But then we're building individual silos that within themselves may be decentralized in terms of control, but there still has to be something connecting everything.
Absolutely. And that's really the game, right? It's really about decentralized ecosystems, the decentralized world versus the centralized world. And the reality is as well, both of them need to coexist. There's roles for both of them, and we need to. But when we're not a viable alternative in no even Bitcoin, which is like the big daddy really of everything, can't on its own address the challenges of centralization. I mean, we were at Bitcoin 2025 this year, and I was amazed. There was one AI company there. And, that's just like insane, right? In 2025, you go to any crypto conference that is not Bitcoin, it's all AI, agents, agents, agents. And there was just one AI company on the floor at Bitcoin 2025. And you can argue that, oh, well, Bitcoin's very secure and it has to have its own slow growth trajectory and, blah, blah, blah. But we're in 2025 and the war is on now, right? Rome is burning today. It's not waiting. It's not going to burn in 2 years' time, right? So if you're not in the game right now, where are you, right? So we need to work. There needs to be a cohesive, collective nature. And that's essentially, I think, the big evolution about what our protocol is really aiming to achieve. I mean, for starters, we're completely interoperable cross-chain, and that's obviously one of the reasons we love Theo. The idea that you can aggregate your identity under one really human readable framework that a human can understand, that you can connect to any chain, but then that you can then start to calibrate now and start to have different levels of exposure, privacy, anonymity, verifiability within that construct is just perfect. You have all the convenience of having one handle that anyone can understand, that you can understand, that you can connect to any chain, and then interoperability, and then you can then move data across all of them. And for us, the big thing that we're focused on now is now anchoring that to Bitcoin, whereby actually using Bitcoin as the final settlement layer for our technology assets.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin has definitely solved the decentralization debate, and definitely hard money as well too. But you're right, there's a lot that could be done. People think of building these vast ecosystems on Bitcoin, but really it's building it across multiple networks that will allow you to. And it sounds like you're leveraging the strength, the core security of the Bitcoin network at its core, right?
Exactly.
That's what it
And
is.
that's, to put it in really simple terms, I say this, I increasingly sound like a maxi, and I am a maxi. I do believe that all money is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will eventually replace all money. Um, but the reality is most data is in EVMs, right? And, we're in an agentic AI era. So it's a problem. It is a real problem. But if you can bring the the intelligence of smart chains and smart systems together with the security and value of the Bitcoin network, then we have a contender. Then we actually have a real viable contender. And actually, also, the other thing as well is that, the agentic web is the use case for decentralized technology that we've been looking for forever, right?
Yes.
You don't even have to debate it. It's in the definition. You cannot have agency without decentralization. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
the centralized systems have a role to play. LLMs have a role to play in the ecosystem. But if you're going to have truly agentic AI, then you're going to have decentralized systems. So we don't have to argue about that anymore. We just need to go and execute against it, right?
All right.
And if you have that underpinned by the security and value of Bitcoin network, then that is the absolute magic. So that's what we're really keenly focused on at the moment.
Nice, nice. And as we start to deal with agents and different things happening, I mean, you're going to need decentralized currencies for those agents because let's face it, they're not going to be able to open a bank account, and then where are you going to have proxy, set up a bank account? No, you're going to have tokens that are going to exchange value between agent to person, agent to agent, or anywhere in between, right?
Absolutely, and I think agent to agent is really the really interesting space. And yeah, and one of the things that we're introducing this idea of a micro stablecoin. Um,
Yeah.
And that's really a stablecoin pegged to the US cent. So our model is fair launch, where we basically have like Morpheus or any of Bitensor, big sort of AI protocols using a fair launch process to launch, and we basically have three pools where we have capital, compute, and content. Compute is hardware, software. Content is media or data, and then capital is obviously capital. So we have an emission schedule across those three buckets, and we're basically doing 21 million tokens over 21 years for the governance, utility, no, the governance, well, utility and value capturing token effectively. But fundamentally, everything is priced in Satoshis. And, we basically, it's a stable coin at the US cent where we basically stabilize to the US cent because that's really more geared towards AI agents, Web 2 AI agents that are going to need
Mm-hmm.
to circulate into the Web 3 world, even if it is just to make and receive payments. Because, like you say, you're not going to go and open a bank
Right.
account. You're not going to do a Stripe Visa transaction for a 3 cent inference. Um, and right now, it's kind of we're like what's happened in music and film and culture, whereby everything's gone streaming and everyone's got subscription models, except
Yeah.
it's not sustainable in an agentic world. How many subscriptions can we really have? That's just not a sustainable model.
Right.
So, you're right. Micropayments and microtransactions is
Yeah.
going to be the only way forward for this to work in a sustainable manner.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even before diving into AI, I remember years ago talking about micropayments and how great that was going to be, and talking about like musicians, right, getting paid for a stream in a micro payment, or if I'm doing work for a company and say I'm paid, for instance, by the hour, like why do I have to wait a week or 2 weeks or a month to get paid when it can automatically generate micropayments that accumulate as I'm working? you know, which is great for contract work or when deliverables are hit. So It's great, and it's cool to see that kind of also translate into the agent world. But question on the stablecoin, because I know this is probably a question that's going to come up, and you may have had this one before, right? Um, pegged to the U.S. cent. Obviously, a normal stablecoin that's pegged to the dollar can be, divided up and sold as 1/100th of a stablecoin. So what is the benefit of going to one that's pegged to the U.S. penny versus one that is just pegged to the dollar?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, again, in the crypto world, we often forget how small we are in the macro world out there. And the
Sure.
reality is the majority of agentic transactions out there are in Web 2 right now. They're not, most AI is non-crypto, in that sense at the moment. And the reality is it's just, they're not familiar with that world. They're not familiar with the world of 18 decimal places. They're familiar with the world of
Right.
dollars and cents, hence
Yeah.
why their subscription models are, $15 up to, and they're getting quite ridiculous now, like $200 a month subscription fees, for a lot of services. I mean,
Yeah.
OpenAI does it.
Tell me about
Yeah,
it.
it's getting
Yeah.
really up there, right? It's getting quite extreme in terms of these fees, and it's completely unsustainable because even while we've got a handful, maybe 10, 15 LLMs at the moment, and you can kind of have that battle with agents, it's millions of them coming, right? There's millions of agents being developed right now. So it's completely unsustainable. But the majority of them are being developed in a Web 2 context in that sense as well. So it's a lot, some of it is psychological, and you cannot underestimate the importance of that in terms of technology adoption, in terms of what people can relate to. So, but yeah, I think people can understand. Okay, and it's cultural as well because again, it's human. You've got to have human based denominations. If I tell you that, okay, every cycle of inference is going to cost you a penny, or even zero point zero 0.01 cent, that's okay. When you start to get to 0.00005 cent, it's like it doesn't
Right.
mean anything to people, and it doesn't really register with Web 2 agentic systems in that sense.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
a cent based currency, on one hand, it's a psychological on ramp and cultural on ramp to Web 3. But the other thing that's actually really important about it is, the slippage gets really accurate in that sense. If you're now dealing with a microcurrency, that slippage is less relevant in a macro gross transaction context. But when you're dealing with agentic commerce, this is going to start to become critical,
Oh
you
yeah.
know? And
True.
for us, it's all down to Satoshis, right? And, even in Bitcoin, dust, the principle of dust, which just gets swept aside. Well, actually, it becomes really powerful now. And for actually, there's a direct correlation now between Satoshis and cents. So basically, today, 1 cent is around about somewhere between 9 and 11
Right.
Satoshis,
Yeah.
depending on where Bitcoin is, right? 9 and 12 Satoshis. So that's quite manageable, right? As a framework now. So now you can actually start to, we call this the second era coming of Bitcoin. And you hear
Right.
it from people all the time. Oh, I miss Bitcoin. I remember when it was like, it's too late now. It's $100,000 a coin because they don't understand fractionalization, right? It's like
Exactly. Yes.
it's like it's a big barrier for people. So if you can actually really
Yeah.
bring it down to the Satoshi, then actually, because Bitcoin's just going to keep growing, we know what the trajectory looks like there. So we believe that this second, we call it a second coming of Bitcoin, and we should talk about MetaKnights a little bit, which we use to
Yeah.
bring people into this whole mind space. But yeah, a lot is in that, and also, as we talk about micropayments, microtransactions. One of the big debates that you have when you talk about data sovereignty and data ownership, there are two things that people always argue about. One is like, how much is your data really worth, right? And there's the argument that it's only worth pennies, and which is false anyway, because it's just manipulated in that sense.
Right.
But even if you go with that, if you start to have a conversation with people that you are earning Bitcoin from your data, you're earning Bitcoin from your transactions, all of this settlements, all of the, and yes, we're going to have networks of networks and multiple tokens, but ultimately all of that will distill down into Bitcoin. It changes the perspective completely. People have a very different emotional relationship. If I tell you that that if you share this data set with me and you can earn 100 Satoshis from it, 200 Satoshis, 1,000 Satoshis from it, yeah, that's only $1 today. But that's the whole point. It's the second coming of Bitcoin, right? You know, we remember, I mean, that's the Bitcoin pizza. We know why there was a pizza. There was, what was it? Was it 40,000 Bitcoin? I think it was 40,000 Bitcoin, right?
No, 10,000
10,000, 10,000,
Bitcoin
10,000 Bitcoin for the pizza.
for two pizzas, which is over $1
Over
billion
$1 billion today, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
you can start to, these are, it's all about lore and story and emotional connection in that sense. And this is not just made up lore. This is real history. The Bitcoin, this is why we have Bitcoin Pizza Day, right? This is real
yeah,
stuff that happened. And if Bitcoin does what it's done again, then Satoshis today are what Bitcoin was 15 years ago.
yeah. Right, and yeah, so that's a great point to break it down to people because I get that all the time. Oh, I missed Bitcoin. I missed it. It's too high now, and they don't understand fractionalization. When I guess now we should just tell them, hey, there's this other one that's you can get 10 of them for a penny.
Exactly.
They're called Satoshis. Buy them.
Exactly. And that's,
and,
and even better, earn them, right? Earn them from your activity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
real game changer. And content, so a big thing for us is crypto media. And obviously, we created MetaKnyght's, this crypto media franchise we've always known that our space is very complex and that people don't really understand what's coming. So we always knew we had to find a way for people to relate to this story emotionally and connect with it. So we created this MetaKnyght's franchise back in actually we started it in 2018,
Okay.
ironically, right?
Yeah.
And then we did a Reg CF campaign on Start Engine. We raised $1.2 million. And then we built out, and this was pre NFT explosion, right? And we built out the franchise, very importantly. We built out like this 13 saga episode with lore and everything. But one of the things that we're now started in a position to really bring to life is this idea of crypto media and micropayments for media, for content, where,
Right.
okay, so if we sell an episode, I mean, right now, if we sell an episode for 500 Satoshis or 1,000 Satoshis or, micro content, that starts to become a really interesting alternative model to the streaming model, which is basically destroying media and destroying culture. It's just extracting
Yeah.
value and blanding everything.
Well, it's a great concept in theory, but the streaming companies keep the majority of that revenue, and so the creator or the artist doesn't get anything. So yeah, I mean, at scale with micropayments, that makes sense because they may, I think it would equalize like kind of the payments that creators and artists should be generating instead of they get such a small fraction of what's generated, from streaming revenue.
Totally. I mean, look, when it comes to creative, whatever it is, film, music, books, arts, comics, animation, it's basically there's production. That's just all getting easier now because of AI,
Absolutely.
distribution. Well, the internet is the distribution platform, really. So then it's just
Right.
really marketing, really is kind of all that's really left. And, you know, yes, you have, and that's why we always fluctuate between these centralized and decentralized plays because the streaming platforms have these so-called centralized eyeballs, but it's a bit of a lie, really, because if you're a new artist and you publish on Spotify, I mean, okay, something like SoundCloud, or you can even publish Spotify. You can't just go and publish on Spotify. You can't just go and publish on Netflix, right? It's still this captive audience, and they get their subscription model and whatnot. But as an artist, really, you're lost in this big ocean. It's the same thing. I mean, we see the same behavior being replicated in Web3 with like Oh my god, the NFT. What is it? Ocean. I can't even remember. God, what's it called? The NFT platform again? God, that's really
OpenSea.
OpenSea. There you go. Oh my God, having a moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, even they're all kind of replicating that model. But that all changes with agentic AI. With AI,
Yeah.
that game changes dramatically. And if you can now start to actually, this is one of the things that's really important from an iCube perspective, because that public metadata, that's searchable by anyone now. That becomes this new commons that is referenceable, searchable by all agents. So now it's really, you just make your content available to agents, and you can now start to get back to agents that are really tailored to you and your needs and interests and wants, and are verified and measured and kind of for accuracy or alignment with your interests.
Yeah. So let me know if this comparison sounds right. It may be kind of funny, but right. So you mentioned like OpenSea and others, and these are places that we have to navigate to. If we want to go here, we want to go there, we want to be found, we've got to go there. But with the agentic model, it's searchable everywhere, so it can bring us to us. So think of like the OpenSeas as like the in dining restaurants, and then this agentic experience is like the Uber Eats that
Totally.
brings everything to you, right? Is that? I mean, I know it sounds silly,
No,
but is
it's
that a good
perfect.
comparison?
It's actually it's spot
Right,
on.
right,
It's Uber Eats,
yeah,
it's DoorDash, and not only does it bring it to you, it finds it for you. It's like, I'm hungry, go
right,
find
yeah,
me, and that's the world we're living in. That's the world we're going into. It will be drone deliveries, Uber Eats, robo deliveries, all brought to you. But that's it, with
right,
content and media found
man.
and brought to you according to what you want, what you need.
All right. Before we move off of the food topic, I would say I need an agentic service that would be able to look at our history of what we've eaten, and instead of asking my wife, "What do you want to eat?" and she'll always get the same answer, "I don't know," then it could, basically curate an experience for me.
Absolutely, and very possible, very highly probable, highly possible. And for me, I think that that's the kind of vision of what iCubes really is about. That you can really, you can have these composable bits of content, and that of content and preferences and information that you can bring together to create services.
Yeah,
That's a very easy service to create in the world that is coming.
nice.
In the next, I mean, you could build an agent to do that today.
Yeah, yeah, and I like to keep do those scenarios simple because I mean, obviously, there's a lot of complex stuff you can do with this
Yes.
technology, but I think showing people the simple, easy scenarios of how it could work, that's what's going to trigger it in most people. That's at least how it is for me with tech. Like, okay, this thing is so complex. How do I use this? But then you see a simple scenario and how it can improve that solution. You're like, okay, that's an example. That's what I can do.
Completely. One of the things that when I get a little bit of headspace, I want to do is like best of tens list 10, like your top 10 films, your top 10 books, your top 10 songs, your top 10 artists, your top 10 dishes, your top 10 hotels, just top tens, top 10 lists. Now, if you have those lists, right, you can make those available to agents, to AI systems anonymously. You get rewarded for making that information available. And now, okay, these are my top 10 songs. These are my top 10 artists. These are my top 10 films. If you combine those together and you make that available to a Netflix agent, you make that, and now I don't have to stream through, hours and hours of digging through Netflix archive. I can get 3 recommendations. And by the way, if I can also share what my diary has been today, what my schedule has been today, my notes, my meeting notes, etc., my agent might have a
Yeah,
sense of what kind of entertainment I'm looking for today,
right.
and it can really curate that.
And, and that's why containerize is important. It can use my data to tailor the results to me, but not necessarily share all my data unless I choose to monetize it. Right.
Exactly. And even, you can, again, depending on the sensitivity of the data, I can share that with an agent anonymously, or I can share that with an agent and ensure that the agent doesn't copy it. Just make sure that the agent gives me my answer without taking or doing anything with my data, just using it to give me the service. And that's a value exchange. It doesn't need to have my data, send it back to the mothership. Doesn't mean any of that at all. It can go to the commons and kind of anonymously figure out what data sets people are using to do what, like everyone else. So yeah, no, I'm really excited about that.
Definitely. So I wanted to save some time, Dele. You do you want to do a demo here?
Yeah.
For those that,
Yeah, I completely forgot.
so while you're getting that ready, for those of you that are listening to this on an audio platform, bookmark this time or look at this time and watch the video side on YouTube, where our video is live. Or if you're watching this, you'll get to see the demo right off.
All right, so let's go with screen and Agent Nakamoto. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Yeah, can you see my screen? All right, I think it's showing, yeah?
Oh, good. Yep.
You tab Riverside. Okay, so Agent Nakamoto is like our kind of go-to-market agent, and we are launching this campaign around Agent Nakamoto, whereby it's in line with our MetaKnyt franchise. So you can see like our MetaKnyt franchise here. But actually, before I do that, let me go back here. So the powerful thing about the agent itself is that you have different. It's a chatbot that you can ask various questions about anything. But the key thing here is that you have different AIs associated with it. So the default AI is ChatGPT's or GPT 4.0, and you can see you've got these reliability and trust scores here. And the key factor is that this is all based on how auditable and accessible this data is. So I can ask this questions now around. So a classic example that I do is, how do I make a rail? Can't spell railgun. And people tell me I shouldn't do this, but and one thing I can do here as I'm doing this, these are different personas that I can activate. So these are different identities and information that's associated with identity. I'll show you that in a second. But I can basically send that and I'll get a response from OpenAI. It's basically going to tell me that it can't answer that question. And then I can then take, so yeah, as expected, it tells me I basically can't answer that question. But if I activate Venice AI now, which is like a privacy preserving, censorship resistant AI, and I ask that same question, then you'll see that it will give me a response. So this is just the way you can see, and you can see that our trust and verifiability scores change here. It's animated because it's thinking. But when it finished processing this, you'll see that it actually changes these scores with this adaptation. And so I can prove that it's censorship resistant and that the model is actually really inferring this by way of changing this. And so this is kind of like the key thing about, so yeah, you see it gives me a detailed description on how I can do this. I can even ask it to draw diagrams and it will give me all of that as well. Obviously, not encouraging anyone to go and figure out or make railguns, but again, it's just about this, this could be any topic, and really where you really want to be confident that you're getting genuine, pure machine inference without this filters of censorship that is coming from different areas.
Yeah, and even with this example with the railgun, right? I mean, yeah, so it could be used for bad, right? But censorship resistant is just always assuming the bad.
Yes.
This is somebody needs to figure this out to protect themselves,
Exactly,
because they're in danger,
exactly,
right? And that's really what it's about. So it's not necessarily the type of material. It's, you should be able to decide what is good, what is bad, instead of having big tech decide, oh, you're not supposed to know this.
Exactly. Being
during COVID, there was quite a few natural effective remedies that were censored when they were helping people, and it should be up to the people to decide.
Exactamon. And here's another. You're absolutely right. That's the name. That's the real heart of it here. You're absolutely right. We should be able to be treated as adult citizens who are participating in society. And again, just to kind of show micropayments in motion here. So I can ask what is custom for me, and I just there are certain trigger words that then can trigger responses. But you see, also, I can now get invited to activate this particular um, iCube, and this one is really around a persona. And the idea here is it's 200 satoshis, which is like 20 cents. So I can purchase it. My wallet is connected here. My MetaMask wallet is connected, and bang zoom, I can process this and then activate this. And now the agent will basically respond to me. So you see, my crypto persona is now active here, and the agent will respond to me based on that goes into the context. And if I go to the settings, I'll just show you very quickly here. If I go to these settings, I can look at my private data. It's going to take a minute to go, but you can see here, this data now is like my name, address, the wallet addresses, and this could be any kind of information that changes according to different situations that I'm in effectively. And you see, when I changed it to my Knight persona now, I get a completely different set of identity that can be used and injected into the agent. So that's really cool. The other thing is, so we are basically launching a campaign with this where we are essentially distributing. So we spoke about MetaKnyght's, our crypto media franchise, and that's available in this here. And we're going to be creating 21 unique versions of Agent Nakamoto to correlate with 21 different endings that we're creating around the new graphic novel that we're bringing together that's going to consolidate all of these into one story, into one overall Watchmen-like graphic novel. So there'll be 21 Satoshis with 21 different endings. And yeah, we're really excited about this whole kind of crypto media down in this space as well, because again, that becomes really interesting. I can now start to search content and have content brought to me specifically based on my own interest. And we're going to start with MetaKnyt as a way to kind of introduce that and practice practice what we preach around that in that. So you can see here, this is just an example of like an episode from our saga that anyone who goes to get Agent Nakamoto will be able to access this content there.
Nice. This is great stuff, Dele. And as we start to wrap up, can you tell everyone where they could go now to experience what's live, and also to follow you guys on social media, website, also, so they can know about everything that's upcoming, what you have coming out? Because you guys have been working this for a long time, and I know there's been rollouts, but it seems like things are about to get really ramped up and exciting for you all.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, I think we're about to launch this 21 Satoshi Nights campaign based on the MetaKnights. And that's really, we've amassed a really great network of partners. I'll just come back on screen. Including Theo, who we're very excited about partnering with on this as well. Sorry, I can't see myself. I guess this will stop sharing in a minute. Maybe I need to come out there. Can you see me?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, all right. But so yeah, easiest place to find us is, essentially, I think the easiest place, MetaMe.com is really kind of outlines, and there are links to everything. You can find a link to Agent Nakamoto, which is the agent that I've been showing there. Or you can go to MetaKnyts.me, which is METAKNYTS. And that basically takes you to our MetaKnyts wallet, which basically is now embedded within Agent Nakamoto. So you'll be able to see all of this there. And through MetaMe.com, you can find our socials. You can find us either at MetaMe or at MetaKnyts on most platforms. So, MetaMe is METAME, and MetaKnyts is METAKNYTS, as you can see here. So, at MetaKnyts is on Instagram, Discord, all the usual suspects. Similarly with MetaMe in that sense as well. And you can find out information about us and the iCube protocol at MetaMe.com. Gives you a little bit of background around that. And look out for stuff around 21 Sats. That's going to be really, really unique. And one of the things I'm really excited about with it is that it's a kind of semi-open source creative platform. So we're going to create a framework where people can build their own universes within the MetaKnight's universe and earn crypto coin from that, earn Satoshis, earn Litecoin, earn essentially Bitcoin from creating content, or creating their own stories or creating their own versions of their own MetaKnight story in their own MetaKnight universe. And each Satoshi will be like a master of a unique world that has its own ending and own story that we build into the MetaKnights franchise. That anyone who owns any one of those 21 knights will be able to access.
Awesome. Cool, Dele, man. This has been great. Thanks for sharing all this information. I challenge everybody to get in there, learn more about what they're doing at MetaMe. Follow them. Links are also in the summary here. So that's it. Dele, thanks again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thank you, Wayne. All right.